Alright, welcome to episode 2 of Drew's Brew Reviews, a offshoot of Pints of Interest that's a little bit more up to date and a little bit quicker. Alright, what I'm doing today is the timely, maybe slightly on the late side here, Post Road from Brooklyn Brewery. This is their pumpkin ale. This isn't one that I've had before, so I'm looking forward to it. Now, this particular one is done in the older style of pumpkin beers, a little bit more towards the colonial times when they originally came over to America and were brewing beers. They did not have malt available to brew with, so what they used was the native availability of pumpkins. So pumpkins created the fermentable sugar that they used to create beers. So that's kind of where the tradition of pumpkin beer started from. Now, those initial pumpkin beers, I'm sure, were a little bit more on the earthy, bitter side. Considering the sweetness of pumpkin versus malt is a very different thing as far as the fermenting is concerned. So what Brooklyn did with Post Road here was actually use barley malt in addition with the pumpkin mash for this. So this is probably going to be just a little bit more earthy, maybe a little bit more bitter, not quite as a sweeter pumpkin beer as you might be used to depending on what pumpkin beers that you've had. I'm going to go ahead and pour this bad boy here. Before I do that, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of the stats. It is 5% ABV. I paid $3.50 for this. The serving glass for this is any kind of pint glass, really. These are usually served on the colder side, about 45 degrees, and it's a seasonal beer that's available in the fall. A lot of pumpkin beers recently have been coming out earlier and earlier, sometimes into August, almost into like mid-July. I think some of the pumpkin beers have become available, so those are creeping up more and more. So I would actually start looking a little bit before fall for some of the pumpkin beers when that season comes around. Now, obviously, we're later into the fall season, so these should be readily available. All right, so let's give this one a pour. I'm going to be pouring this into a Becker glass. It's just a version of the pint glass that I had available that I'm doing. I'm not going to be pouring this into any kind of secondary glass because really a pint glass is what you should be using for a pumpkin beer. See this poured out nice. Kind of a lovely gold amber color to it. Really nice white head on the top. Pretty thick. Looks pretty darn good. There's a yeasty malt quality to it, almost like a biscuity aroma. However, it's not. You get those elements of the pumpkin beer that you're used to without that overuse of kind of the nutmeg and clove and that pumpkin pie kind of spices that you usually get in the nose of a lot of these pumpkin beers. This one does not do that. There might be just a hint of brown sugar quality to it. There's just a little bit of that kind of spicy sweetness that's there, but much more earthy. Much more if you smelled like if you're carving a pumpkin and you've kind of smelled the guts in there. You're getting a little bit more of the pulp kind of pumpkin smell out of this particular beer. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a try. Okay, this is kind of exactly how I thought it would be. Not overly sweet. On the drier, kind of bitter side, earthy, very earthy quality to it. The lightness of the beer, you'd think that it might be a little bit lighter. It's definitely a thin beer when you try it, but the bitterness of it's kind of what's surprising. It's almost, the lack of sweetness almost gives it kind of a minerally seltzer quality to it, that you get the sweetness up front, and then as it kind of moves through and finishes, kind of gets just a little bit blander in a way. Prickly carbonation, kind of a taste that's here and gone. Real drinkable, I think, for people maybe that are a little bit more into IPAs. Now, this isn't an IPA bitterness, but who don't like that malty sweetness to it, who want a little bit more of that pumpkin quality. As far as that really coming through, though, that watery bitterness just, it's not appealing to me. It's not a bad beer by any means. Not really my style of pumpkin beer, but I could definitely see people that are in more to the traditional pumpkin styles would like this quite a bit. I'd definitely put this in the try-if category. If you don't mind seltzery finishes, if you want it to be more pumpkin, less pumpkin pie, and if you don't really like the pumpkin spices sometimes that end up in a lot of these pumpkin-style beers that override the beery quality. Pretty much it from Drew's Brew Reviews and Post Road from Brooklyn Brewery for Drew's Brew Reviews Episode 2. Cheers. For more beer reviews and episodes, you can go to pintsofinterest.net, on Facebook at facebook.com/pintsofinterest. You can also follow us on Twitter at Pints of Interest for 140-character beer reviews.